Well, good morning, everyone. It is so great to see all of you today. Everybody just take a minute. Like, I had to stop watching that halfway through because I'm like, girl, you got work to do. We just need to get it together and try to hold on to everything here so we can get up and do the thing that we're here to do today. Welcome, everyone. My name is Amanda Neppl, and I am one of the pastors over at the West Des Moines campus primarily. I serve over there as the adult discipleship team leader and do other pastory things. But it is so great to be hanging out with all of you here today on this Mother's Day. Let me make sure I got all my accoutrements, got things here in the right hand, so I'm ready to go. Happy Mother's Day. I know that today is a little bit complicated for a lot of us. I know that some of you, Mother's Day is your absolute favorite day, like you've been thinking about it all week and you got it all planned out and there's things that are happening today and wild horses couldn't keep you from it. And then I know that there are others of you here in the room. Well, you know what? I know that for some of you today was a really hard day to come to church. I know that. Because I hear that from women every single year, that today is a hard day for them to come and feel like they have to put on a brave face. And then there's everything in the middle. And I think for many of us, we could probably best describe Mother's Day as complicated. And so if that's you today, I want to let you know that you are here, you are in the right place. Whatever your feelings are about today, you're here in the right place, and we are so glad that you're here as we gather together today to worship. And to gather together to worship is exactly what we are going to do this morning. So let's continue with that. I want to take a look at the Bible reading that you heard from today, and actually we're going to back up just a couple of verses, and we are going to start in 1 Timothy chapter 1, but we're going to start with verses 3 and 4. And I want to just let you know a little bit of what's happening here. Paul is writing a letter to kind of his mentee, Timothy. Timothy is someone who Paul has sent him to the church in Ephesus because the church in Ephesus is having some challenges, some issues, some struggles. And so Timothy has been sent there by his mentor, Paul, to do this work in the city of Ephesus. And in this letter, the second letter that Paul writes to Timothy, Timothy's having a little bit of a hard time. And so Paul finds himself in this place where he is reminding Timothy of who he is. And he's reminding Timothy, I am praying for you. You are not out here alone. You are not being left to your own devices. You are not being called to do this work that you are called to do. You are not being called to do it on your own. And so Paul says, I am constantly thinking of you in my prayers. Paul reminds his mentee Timothy that he is constantly lifting him up and that he really wishes that they could be together again, because Paul would really love to encourage him face to face, but that just simply isn't going to be possible because Paul is under house arrest in Rome. And so he is not going to be able to get together with this younger person who is doing the work in Ephesus, who he thinks so highly of and loves so dearly. So he is writing in this letter and saying to him, I am praying for you constantly. Know that you are always being lifted up in my prayers. And then he goes on, and this is what we picked up with today that we heard read for us just a few minutes ago. Not only is Paul reminding Timothy that he is not alone, that Paul is praying for him, that Paul is supporting him, that Paul is thinking of him all the time, but the other thing that Paul is doing for Timothy is he is reminding him who he is. He's reminding him of the faith that Paul knows that he has because Paul saw this faith that came to him from his mother, Eunice, and his grandmother, Lois. There is a legacy in Timothy's life of these faithful women who have come before him, who gave him their faith, and he owned it. He owned that faith that they had raised him with, and he took it as his own. And now here he is in this city of Ephesus, spreading God's word, doing the hard work that needs to be done. And we get the sense that maybe he's starting to wonder if he's doing the right thing, if he's making any type of a difference, if his gifts are really mattering. Because as Paul reminds him who he is, he also goes on to remind him, you have a legacy. You have this place that you have come from, but more importantly, you have been given the gifts of the Holy Spirit to do the work that you are called to do. He's reminding him, Timothy, you are one part, a very important part, but you are one part in a bigger story. And that bigger story that you were part of starts, of course, with your ancestors, specifically with your grandmother and with your mother, but it continues on in the story that God is writing partially through the work that you are doing. He is saying to Timothy, remember who you are. Remember who is with you. Remember who is behind you. And remember what you're working toward when you find yourself in that place when it all just feels like it's a little bit too much or a lot too much, as the case may be sometimes. You guys probably remember in 2004, well, some of you do, some of you were not born yet, but some of you remember, in 2004, there was a movie that came out. It's a Pixar movie. It's The Incredibles. I was a little surprised / saddened to realize that it came out in 2004, but that tracks because my kids watched it, and that would be precisely when they were in that stage of watching movies over and over and over again. We wore out The Incredibles DVD. They loved that. And so if you're familiar with it, the premise here is that it's a family of superheroes, and they've gotten to a place where they have to hide who they are because the public has decided that the superheroes are dangerous, and now we must be protected from the supers. And so they go into hiding, right? So you have the dad, and he has super strength, and then you have the mom, and her name is Elastigirl, and she has super stretch. Moms, am I right? Right? She has super stretch capabilities, and then there's the preteen daughter who puts up force fields, and we won't even talk about that. And then there's the son who's super fast, and then there's the baby, and we don't know what his gifts are yet. But they're in this place where they have to hide who they are. They're in this place that because everybody has decided they're dangerous, they don't get to use their gifts anymore. And so this first scene that we're going to take a look at, they're at dinner. And guys, everything is going badly because this family, they are exhausted and they are weary. They have had the life sucked out of them because they have had to hide their gifts. They haven't been able to be the people that they were created to be. And so here in this scene, the siblings are fighting, okay? And there are some unkind words that are being used. I am not holding this up as an example of a wonderful family dinner, okay? I am just sharing this with you because these people are struggling. And you can see that they're struggling, and it comes out in all sorts of sideways ways. So take a look. Maybe family dinner feels like that sometimes. I certainly remember those days. But the biggest problem that these guys have is they don't get to be who they're created to be, and it is slowly, day by day by day, sucking the life out of them to have to figure out how to be in the world in a way that is not in alignment with who they were created to be. Guys, I'm not trying to be subtle here, okay? How many of us do this exact same thing in one way, shape, or form, right? Where we behave and act as though we don't. Maybe we're jealous of other people's gifts. We don't use our gifts because we wish we had the gifts that somebody else had. Or maybe we're waiting until a certain set of circumstances in our life to use our gifts because we feel like at some point it'll get easier. They'll make more sense to us. Or maybe we're in this place where we still are kind of convincing ourselves that we don't have gifts to share, which is just couldn't be further from the truth. The Bible makes it very clear that we all have gifts to share with the world. But whatever the million reasons might be why some of us get in this place where we're not doing it, please understand this. It is sucking the life out of you to not be who you're created to be. And not only that, it's stealing from you, but it's also stealing from the world around you that is desperate for you to show up in the way that literally only you can do. I want you to understand something, and I hope that this isn't news to you, but I really want you to hear it this morning. Every single one of us here in this room, every single one, doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter male, female, child, whatever it is, you, exactly you, in this room today, hearing my voice, you have been created by God to matter to the world in a way that no one else can. Do you hear that? You have been created by God to matter in a way that absolutely no one else can. Only you can be you in the life that you have been given. And if you choose to not fully engage with who you are and fully not participate in the life that you have been given, it doesn't get replaced by somebody else. It's just absent. Moms, like you know this, nobody else can be a mom for your kiddo. I hope that you know it. Nobody else can show up in your life and be the mom to your kids that you are. Nobody can replace that. People can learn how to live without it, but as a mom, you cannot be replaced. Whoever you are, whatever your age, whatever your roles, wherever you show up in life, you cannot be replaced by the people in your life who you love and who love you. You have a specific part that you play, and that part matters. that part matters, and to not bring those gifts and to not bring your talents and to not bring all of who you are into everything that you do doesn't just hurt you, it hurts the world around you as well that needs you to be you. There are a couple women in the Bible who I want to highlight for us today, because some of these stories, we don't get to talk about them enough. We don't really have the time. So as long as I get to preach a Mother's Day sermon, let's talk about a couple of these women who we're going to find in the Bible. You can find them in the Old Testament and the New Testament. I just happened to pick a couple from the Old Testament. And the first one that we're going to talk about this morning is Ruth. And to help us understand Ruth's story, we really have to think about, and the next story that we're going to talk about too, and both of these, it's really important to understand the way, the context, I guess I would say, of the world that they were walking in. The world that they were walking in was extremely patriarchal. It was extremely patriarchal, and it was extremely harmful to women. And this is just the reality of the world that they lived in and the way that they were forced to be in the world. But here's the story of Ruth. It goes back a generation. There's a woman named Naomi, and Naomi and her husband have 2 sons. They live in the land of Judah, but there's a famine in the land of Judah, and so they have to move to a different land. And so they go to this different land. The sons grow up. They marry. They both get married. One of them marries a woman named Ruth. Well, in this new land that they live in the course of events, there is a war, and both Naomi's husband and her 2 sons die in this war. And so now Naomi, she has left her homeland because there was a famine there, but now that she is without a husband and she's without sons, she has no one to care for her. And she's going to be put in a position where in order to survive, she is going to have to beg. That is her only option. And so she decides, well, if this is what I'm going to have to do, then maybe I will go back to Judah because maybe there is a relative there who will take pity on me and will help me out. So she decides that she's going to go back to Judah. But she wants to send her 2 daughters-in-law back to their families. She wants them to stay there so that she's thinking that maybe they're young, maybe they will be able to get remarried, and maybe they'll be able to be cared for in that way. Is it me? Okay. Maybe I got too close to the speaker. So they want her, Naomi wants her daughters-in-law to stay behind, hopefully get remarried and be cared for in that way. But Ruth decides that she is absolutely, positively not going to leave her mother-in-law. She decides that if Naomi is going to have to figure it out, if she's going to have to beg, then Ruth decides that she will be the one to take on that burden, and she will be the one to care for her mother-in-law, who understands she has absolutely no responsibility to whatsoever. And so that's what they do. They go back to Judah, and ultimately what happens here is God is faithful. God blesses Ruth's efforts when Ruth acts in integrity and character and loyalty and wisdom and honoring her mother-in-law. God sees that, God blesses that, and isn't that what God always does? Like God always takes like the little meager bit that we have to offer, the little thing that we have that doesn't really seem like it's worth much, but God takes it and multiplies it. And so that's what God does in the life of Ruth and Naomi. Ruth does end up marrying one of Naomi's relatives, but for the purpose of this story, and then when they got married, then everything was good for them. They were safe, they were cared for after that. But for the purpose of this story, it's Ruth's actions. It's using the way that God made her that put her in the position so that God was able to take that and multiply it and bless her and to bless everybody around them. It's because of Ruth's loyalty, her commitment to her obligations, that she is one of 4 women that we find in the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew chapter 1. These characteristics that Ruth had, she must have passed them on to her family, must have passed them on to her grandchildren, because Ruth's story then is that she becomes the great-grandmother to a man named David, who would be Israel's great king, that they would always remember and always be looking for the one who could come in and help them the way that King David had. The next woman then that I want to talk to you about, this story is deep in the Old Testament. If you've never closely read 1 Samuel 25, you probably have missed it. But this is one of my favorites, and it's one of my favorites because Abigail is a woman who knows exactly the context of the culture that she is in. She knows exactly what is going on, and she uses her wisdom and her humility and her courage and her understanding of the human heart to do incredible things and to ultimately prevent this man who is David. He's not yet king, but he will be king, ultimately to prevent him from ruining his reputation before he even makes it as a king. A little bit about her story. She is married to a man named Nabal, and Nabal means fool, and this guy totally lives up to his name. He is foolish, he is mean, he is cruel, he's just a bad guy. He's just not somebody that you would want to be around because he's not a good guy. So David and his men, they are forced to kind of wander around. They're kind of nomads, and King Saul, who is the king at that time, is always trying to get after David because he knows that David's going to succeed him, so he's thinking there's one way he can take care of that situation. So David and his men are always trying to just survive and looking out to be, they're on the defense basically all the time. And so they're hungry. They don't have a home base. They don't have a place to be. And so Nabal and his men are out, and David sends his men to ask them then if they are willing to share some provisions with them. And David is going to be king. Everybody knows he's going to be king. He's already defeated Goliath. He's already proved himself as a warrior. So anybody with a lick of common sense would realize that David is not somebody that you want to make into an enemy, right? Unless you're Nabal, and that's just what you do. And so Nabal, it isn't enough for him to just turn David down, but he decides that he has to insult him as well. And so there are servants who hear this whole thing go down, and they're like, we are in trouble. So they hightail it back to Abigail. And they say, guess what this husband of yours just did? And they tell her the whole story. And so then Abigail acts quickly and decisively, and she puts together more provisions than they had even asked for, certainly more than they were going to need. She puts all this together, and she takes it towards David and his men. And the Bible tells us that at the moment that Abigail, with all of these provisions, are approaching David and his men, David has just said to the guy next to him, may the Lord strike me and kill me if there is anybody left alive in Nabal's household tomorrow. So that's the mindset that David is in as Abigail approaches him. And so the Bible tells us that as she approaches him, she comes forward. She understands that she's at a lower station than David is. She bows before him. She takes responsibility for everything that has just happened, even though everybody knows that it is not her fault. But she takes responsibility for it, and then she gets to work reminding David who he is. She reminds him that he is going to be king. She reminds him that all eyes are on him. She reminds him that he has all the power and authority because in her wisdom, she realizes that this doesn't cost her anything to acknowledge who he is, to remind him of who he is, and that this is potentially the only way to save her household and everyone who lives there and works for her husband. She reminds King David of who he is, and in so doing, prevents him from going on this rampage that would have been a terrible way for him to start and to carry that with him as he became king. I want you to understand something about Abigail and Ruth both. When we meet them in the Bible doesn't bother to tell us if they are parents, if they are mothers. Because what the Bible understands is that in telling their stories, that while it would be important, I don't think that they are based on other clues that we are given, but the Bible understands that their status as a parent is not the most important thing about them. Their status as a parent is that they showed up and they used their gifts. They showed up and they used their wisdom and their courage. And because they used their wisdom and their courage, their humility, their grace, their loyalty, their integrity, all these different things that are a part of who they were, because they used those gifts, God showed up, God multiplied them, those gifts, changed the way history was about to play out. And that's why we know their name. Being a parent, if that's what you are, if you're a mom, it is an important part of who we are, but it's not the most important part, and the Bible knows that too. I have 4 kids. I maybe should have led with that, but I have 4 kids, and today they are 18, 20, 22, and 24. That's nuts. One of them is graduating from University of Iowa next weekend, and then my youngest of the 4 is graduating from high school the weekend after that. Being a mom is a really important part of who I am. But it's not the most important part. The most important thing about me is not that I'm their mom. The most important thing about me is not that I'm a pastor. The most important thing about me, interestingly, is also the most important thing about you. And that is that we are children of God. The most important thing about you, the most important thing about me, is that we are children of God. It doesn't matter how old you are. Again, if you're a kiddo sitting in here, the most important thing about you is that you are a child of God. And parents, hear this. The most important thing about your kids is that they also are children of God. And I feel like there are so many ways in this world where we buy this lie that when we find our thing, whatever our thing is, our thing can be anything. But when we find our thing, that we will find it, it will feel great, we will recognize it, we will know it, we will lean our time and our energy into that thing, whatever it is, whether it's family, whether it's career, whether it's something that we're studying at school, whether it is some other dream that we have, but when we find that thing, that we'll lean into that, we'll put our energy into that, and that will be the way that we are able to define ourselves. Here's who I am, and here is what I do, and this is why this is important, and this is why this matters, and this is why you should honor the things that I do in the world. Parenthood is a unique situation in that it just takes so much time, doesn't it? And so you find yourself in this place where you're like, I would really love to pour into who I am, but I'll tell you what, being a parent is just like taking all of my time right now. And some of you have younger kids, and you're thinking that when they get older, that's going to change. And here's what I'd like to tell you. It does, but also this is what happens. These lovely angels up here, last night, two of them decided that they were going to a show downtown or whatever, so they're doing that. I know that they're doing this, right? And so they're adults. They're adults. They do things. So anyway, but I know that they're doing that. And so it was an early, whatever. Long story short, they were back at the other one's apartment relatively early for them, but not relatively early for their mom, who has to preach the next day. And they know that I go to bed early. I'm notorious for my bedtime, actually. But anyway, so I get a phone call, I'm not going to tell you what time, not super late for them, but late for me. Suffice it to say, I am in bed. Now, if you have ever gotten a phone call from a child when you are in bed, it's not anything you want to hear, is it? Never. It has never been anything you want to hear. So this is what I'm prepared for as I answer the phone, and so many things are going through my mind, and none of them good. And do you know what those little lovelies wanted from me? They needed to know what one-time password I had been sent for the Netflix account. Oh my, and so she says, are you in bed? Well, obviously. And then also, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm so, but can you, and I'm so sorry. Okay, I love you. And I said, yep. And so now I'm going to be in a position where I'm going to have to apologize because I was rude and didn't say, I love you too, after this phone call. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yes, I was talking about how much time it takes, parenting, and how much energy it takes. And so you easily get to this point where even if you have time, you don't have the energy to remember what it is that you are trying to accomplish. And here's what I want to say to you today about all of this. Please understand that who you are is so much more than somebody's caretaker, so much more than somebody's holder of all of the accounts. You are so much more than all of that. Who you are, and I want you to hear this loud and clear, who you are is you are someone for whom Jesus was willing to die. That, at the core of you, at that deepest part of you, that is who you are. You are someone for whom Jesus was willing to die. And Jesus does not regret it. You are worth it. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever your story is. So in light of the reality that you are someone for whom Jesus happily went to the cross, for the love, please, I am begging you, do not get so busy with the requirements and the things that you have to do for whatever it is that you are pursuing, whatever it is that you care about. Please do not get so caught up in those important things that you are doing that you forget that at the core of who you are is deeply and perfectly and totally, unendingly loved. Moms, remember, you are so loved in all of the things that you do. In all of the things that you do, whether you make mistakes, with the mistakes that you do make, the ways that you fall short, all of that, it's not who you are. You are so deeply loved. I want to go back to this passage from 2 Timothy that we were talking about, and just kind of, you can open your Bibles or you can go back and refer to it later. This is why it's so important to Paul to remind Timothy of who he is. Because Paul knows that Timothy is up against it. Paul knows that Timothy is not feeling like things are going the way they're supposed to go. Paul knows that Timothy is feeling like he is less than, like he's not up to the task. And Paul can imagine Timothy being in this place and coming to this place in his life where just wondering if it's worth it. Wondering if all the sacrifice and all of the tears and all of the ways that people just don't do the things that you really wish they would do. And Paul understands that it's sucking life out of Timothy. He's forgetting who he is, and so that's why Paul is writing Timothy this letter. He reminds him of the legacy of the women who have come before him. He reminds him that it is not by Timothy's power or even Paul's power, but it is by Holy Spirit's power that Timothy is called to do what he's called to do. And the very last verse of this passage that we heard today, it's 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And I'm going to tell you, this is one of my most favorite verses in the entire Bible. Paul reminds Timothy, I know it is difficult right now. I know you are facing things that you feel like you cannot accomplish, but remember who you are, and remember that the spirit that you have in you, even in these difficult things that you face, the spirit that you have been given is not a spirit of fear and timidity. But Timothy, and to every single one of you here today, the spirit that we have been given is not fear. It is power, and it is love, and it is self-discipline. And if that self-discipline kind of freaks you out a little bit, please don't let it. Just understand that what it means is self-discipline is having the courage and the grit to do what you know needs to be done. That's all that it is. You have not been given a spirit of fear and timidity, but you have been given a spirit of power and love and of self-discipline. That is who you are because Jesus died for you. That is who you are. I know. For these women, imagine in their stories the fear that they had to have faced. I mean, the Bible doesn't talk about their fear, but just like think it through. Like their situations were terrifying. Facing starvation or begging, going back to a land where everybody there is suspicious of you. That was Ruth's story. She was a Moabite. The Moabites were hated by the Hebrews. She was going to go with Naomi, but she also knew that everybody there was going to hate her guts. She had to be terrified. Abigail was facing a bunch of angry, hungry men who had just declared that they wanted to kill her whole family. And she's bringing them everything that they would need, and she bows before them. She had to be terrified. But they were not given a spirit of fear and timidity. They were given a spirit of power and love and of self-discipline, and so are you. There is nothing more terrifying than being a parent. So moms, I understand that, I know that. That's why when the phone rings and you're in bed, it's gonna take you an hour and a half to get back to sleep, right? There is nothing more terrifying than being a parent. You're worried about their safety, just the basics of their safety, and that'd be one thing if that was all that it is. But every single day you turn around, you're worried you're doing it wrong, or you're worried that you're not enough, or you're worried that some arbitrary goalpost is not one that you're going to be able to get to, or and about the time you think you've got it figured out, the marks change. Again, my kids are 18 to 24. I'm here to tell you right now, I am a fantastic junior high parent. Sadly, none of my kids are that age, right? It's terrifying. It's terrifying. But that's not who you are. You're not someone who's been given a spirit of fear and timidity. Who you are is somebody that Jesus died for. And who you are is somebody who shares in that same power given to us by the Spirit. And what that means is the same power that raised Jesus from the dead, no matter who you are, no matter your story, no matter the difficult thing that you face, no matter your age, no matter anything, no matter who you are, that power that raised Jesus from the dead is available to you. Power, love, self-discipline, knowing what to do and having the courage and the grit to be able to do it. That's who you are. In the final scene of this movie, these characters, they've had an opportunity to be who they were created to be. They've had an opportunity to use their gifts. They've had an opportunity to discover what that feels like to be able to use their gifts, to step into the space that they are uniquely called to step into. And when they figure that out, all of a sudden, everything goes a lot better for them. Take a look. It is my prayer for you this week, no matter who you are, no matter what your story is, no matter your stage in life, no matter any of the things that you might be thinking, well, she doesn't know, well, just name it in your head, no matter what. Who you are is a child of God. And who you are is someone that Jesus died for. And who you are is by the power that saved him from death and defeated sin and death and left it in the grave. Who you are is someone who has been given a spirit to do any of the things that you need to do, not because of you, but because of the Lord God who created you, who calls you by name, who sustains you, who gave you those gifts in the first place. That is who gives you the strength to do the difficult things in your life that you need to do, to go out and to live your life in power and love and in self-discipline.